What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, turn on notifications. Let us know what you think about the episode. If you have any suggestions for a future guest or topic, we're always checking comments on there. Love to be able to take your guys' suggestions and then be able to incorporate them into future episodes. Today, I'm going to be chatting with J&K Engines and talking Powerstrokes. We're going to cover 7.3, 6.0, 6.4, 6.7s. And we know that there's a lot of you out there that are looking to either buy a new one or buy one that's relatively new, or you want something that's older, that's pre-emissions, and are looking for information of, how can these engines fail? What are some upgrades that are available? How reliable can they be? So we're going to be joined by their engine builder, and I'm going to ask him what he sees, on cores, what he's building, what are some things to do on each one of those engines. So it's going to be a great conversation. Before we get to it, though, I want to remind you our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off discount code for you. Use code 20diesel at kershaw.kaiusa.com. Great way to save some money on some really cool gear. They've had a bunch of new releases in 2023. Their Duralock models are brand new. I've got my hands on a couple of them. I really like them. There's a bunch of different grip textures to pick from. Also, the way that the knife opens is really convenient. Keeps your fingers out of the way. The blade's made out of D2 steel. It's a really sweet setup to throw in a pocket or have at the job site or around the house. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20diesel, save some money, and get some cool gear. All right, let's get to today's podcast with J&K Engines and talking about Powerstrokes from 7.3s all the way to 6.7s. Zach, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today about engines, Powerstroke engines, what you guys do there at J&K. So I'm excited to chat with you today and have you on.
Yes, sir, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start off. Tell me a bit about yourself, what you do at J&K, your background in diesel and in engine building.
Yeah, for sure. Started here at J&K about 10 years ago. Kind of went right into the engine building process. Been doing all the engine building or hands-on, pretty much every engine that goes out of the shop. Dang, man, never been on a podcast. Sorry.
When we go back to like my first podcast, I was so nervous doing the first one because I was like, wait, people are going to hear me. I got to record my voice and everything. But one of the things I'm always really curious about is what drew you to engine building? Was it something where you're just really into diesel trucks or maybe into gas vehicles before and then it transitioned into diesel?
100% honest, man. Did shop class in high school. Opportunity presented itself and kind of jumped into it. And I'm a hands-on guy, been always work. And so it kind of intrigued me. Jack and Anthony needed an employee at the time. So I jumped in, stripping engines, doing all the, the shop work, as you'd say. The engine builder at the time was offered to help me get to learn it. So started there and then just kind of took over and kind of made my own way. And then just all the techs I talked to and machinists, everything just has helped me to grow my knowledge in it.
What was it like? You said you started there 10 years ago?
Yes.
So what has the technology been like from when you started 10 years ago to now? Like how much has that changed?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, it was like we had to find machinists. I mean, we were loading trucks up or engines up in back of trucks and hauling them to the machine shop. And it was like an engine here, an engine there, hardly doing a lot of line honing. It was, the simplest stuff you could do to get an engine done, and now it's to where we serve with one machinist. Everything is shipped freight truck. They freight truck back. It's daily conversations. It's, going from 10 years ago, it'd be one thing to have 5 engines a week to where now it's 15 with 67 to 70 on a board at all times.
It always amazes me, just especially talking about Fords, is even if they're 15 years old, 20 years old, how many of them are out there on the road? There's just so many trucks that they built.
Yeah, 100%, man. And what's really sparked me is, 10 years ago to me, the teenage thing was the Honda, the Toyota, the little cars, where now it's like the Ford, the Dodge, the Chevy. It's the truck. The truck is the new car, and they just want to build power and go fast.
Oh, yeah. Dan, we've got a lot of Powerstroke listeners, and that's why I was really excited to chat with you today, because we can kind of cover a little bit about most of them. But one of the common things that I hear and it's either from people who don't own one or sometimes people who have and they've gone through the upgrade process, but they'll say, why does 6 liter Powerstroke suck? And not getting into like turbos or, things like that, but just
Right.
the engine itself. What's your opinion on that? What struggles or challenges do they have that you guys are then able to fix in an engine build?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we really love the 6.0 platform as a whole. We've done a lot of things with it. I think they just get a bad rap for head gasket failures, EGR cooler failures, and people just want to put them down. But in all reality, a bulletproof job, or what we do in the engine building, is the updated push rods, the chromoly tubes, the ARP head studs, and then we go a little bit in depth, as far as just line honing every block, CNC on the surfaces, making sure everything's true and flat. And, we can perfect that when we do that work over here.
Do you think that may be part of some of the bad rap in the past is that, say, if we step back 10 years, where maybe the technology wasn't there, kind of in all the diesel shops out there, where they couldn't do this amount of precision. And so somebody do an engine build, they'd have a failure right away. Whereas now the experience and the technology that you have, it's just so streamlined that if somebody wants a reliable 6 liter, they can have it.
I agree 100%. We've come leaps and bounds as far as just especially J&K, but then as the diesel world as a whole, and being able to perfect that with the machinery and constantly doing research and innovation. I mean, yeah, the diesel world is definitely as a whole grown to be able to perfect the Powerstrokes and those diesel engines in general.
And kind of staying with the 6.0 a little bit is what kind of failures do you guys see a lot on cores? Is there? I'm sure there's a bunch of different ones, but are there some common
Yeah,
ones that?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Obviously infamous lifter failure. That's pretty common. I would say 80% of the engines we take apart 6 liter wise is probably lifter failure or cracked heads. It's rare that a bottom end is bad. I would say 20% of them bearing failure or something, and it's more than likely going to be on a Super Duty truck that's been driven hard.
Now, if you were to specify a build for me, say I'm not building a race truck. I want something. Maybe it's 500 horsepower, somewhere between like say 475, 525, maybe 550 tops. But I'm going to be driving it every day. I might tow something. What sort of things should I pay attention to in an engine build to have that setup as reliable as possible on a 6.0?
Yeah, for something that's like that, pretty simple. Stage 2 camshaft. We always recommend Colt or Callie's, and then we ARP head studs, and then we do the chromoly push rods. And then if you're really going to do some towing and things like that, O-ring heads. So kind of our stage 2 engine we offer online is definitely the one to go with that type of setup.
So I'm just thinking of a question with heads because we've heard of fire rings, O-rings, or just how they are stock. What sort of benefits does an O-ring head give to that daily driver or somebody towing with for longevity with it?
Yeah, it's just going to give a better seal and a tighter clamp load on the block itself. And just going to help as far as longevity there goes. It should be able to handle more pressure, things like that.
I don't want to forget about the guys who do like to make power and like to run some bigger turbos and injectors and things like that.
For
As
sure.
we go past that level on a 6 liter, what other upgrades should somebody consider when doing an engine build?
Yeah. I mean, if you're wanting to do the power things, you know, truthfully, we always take on what the person wants to do with their truck, but balanced rotating assembly is always good. Coated bearings, coated pistons, ARP main studs. There's plenty of options, and as we increase power, we choose to do or can do whatever we want to accommodate that person.
What's the coolest 6 liter engine build that you've done an engine for, or one that really sticks out to you?
Oh man, I've done. It's tough. Done a ton. The coolest one probably honestly has to be our stroker stuff. Probably the most recent one we did with our excursion. But basically a 6 liter build. I've done a few, but the ones that guys that go all out with the Wagler rods or any type of aftermarket connecting rod and bigger cam and coated parts. Those always seem to be good. On my end, I do a lot of long block stuff. So sometimes I don't get to put all the flashiness on it. I get to do everything that's internal, you know. So I get a lot of feedback, but every single build has its own uniqueness, and it's all good stuff.
I think I done an episode with Anthony, is maybe a year and a half ago, and he had mentioned the stroker kit to me. Can you remind me what that is? Is it a 6.3 liter that it goes to?
Yeah, 6'3", 383.
And then what drivability or power differences do you guys see with the stroker?
Drivability wise, it drives pretty much just like a 6 liter. There's not much difference there. Power wise, in my personal opinion, it spools quicker. A little bit more, definitely better on the low end side of things. And then a lot of that obviously is going to matter on fuel and air and what you're doing to it too. So,
are 6.0s like the most common engine that you get, Powerstroke engine you guys build there? Or?
Man, I would 100% say it's probably the most common, but we definitely see waves in what we build. Like right now, I probably have 26 liters, but I have about 35 6.4 liter builds to do. So, and then next week it could be, it flips constantly.
Yeah. Well, it's convenient you mentioned 6.4s because we did get a question about one of those, and a guy said, "What do you need to do to a 6.4 engine to make it reliable?" So I think it's somebody who's had a failure. Like, what are the common failures you see on a 6.4 core that comes in?
Yeah, 6 doors. Most common is definitely bottom end failure. But more so on the bottom end side is the F series trucks. I would relate a lot of that to, in my personal opinion, is probably tuning and how they're driven. Um, you know, that being said, none other things we see is piston failures. Not as bad as lifter failures on those motors in particular. But a lot of it, and like I said, in my opinion, is probably drivable related because when we get bus cores that come out of buses, those a lot of times the bottom ends have been good on those type of engines.
I've heard about the piston failures, and so like when you guys are doing an engine build on a 6.4, what are you able to do with the pistons to make them more reliable?
Yeah, so when we do pistons, we use Max Force 7 piston from Molly. We've had really good luck out of that. And so that'll help with piston reliability. And then as far as the bottom end goes, we line hone every block. So oil clearance is usually about everything we do does pretty much go back to OE spec. But those two things right there has really helped us have longevity on the 6.4 as far as bottom end and pistons go.
What's different on the Molly pistons versus the stock ones?
Max Force 7 piston, it's a better casting. The kind of bigger lip too in the bowl. All in all, just a better piston overall.
Is the failure on the stock piston, is it something that just arises with power, or is it part of the emission systems, the regen cycles, where even a stock truck can have an issue with them?
Right. Definitely, I think both those are can happen both ways. A lot of guys, in particular, will point at the piston casting, and then it also can go with emissions too, and fuel system and all those other components. It kind of comes both ways.
I've said it so many times on the podcast, but it's probably my favorite body style of Ford Powerstroke. Yeah. And I remember when they came out, they were so cool with the kind of power they could make and everything. And we've seen it transition a bit, but the technology has really been, I think, there to be able to offer solutions, for guys that have 6.4s. And then, I think about the newer ones, like the 6.7 Powerstroke. Are their failure points entirely different, or are there some common things that you see on 2011 to current trucks?
Yeah, I would definitely say common as far as the 6.4 platform, 6.7 platform. A lot of bottom end stuff. The difference in 6.7, they run a tangless style bearing for the mains and the rods. So I don't know if that partially plays a part in it. And a lot of it too is lack of maintenance. Making sure you're maintaining your truck. I mean, that plays an extremely important role that I think gets put behind, especially when you're talking about landscapers and guys like this who they just have people in their trucks. They're not on top of it, but they're using them for maximum weight, maximum effort all the time.
I imagine that's incredibly important with the stock truck, but then also once they go to one of the engines you guys build, is staying on top of the maintenance just as like a best practice with their oil
Yeah.
changes and coolant and everything else to give it the best chance for success.
Yeah, correct. I mean, oil changes are obviously important, and coolant flushes, doing your trans, and those things. I highly recommend the Motorcraft parts when you're going back together with those, especially on the 6.4 6 liter. I see a ton of like aftermarket caps, aftermarket filters, and it kills filtration, kills oil flow, and ultimately kills these motors.
Is there, on 6.7s, are there a series of common things you see, from the early ones to the, newer ones? Is it just tend to be, because when I think of them, I think of either guys pushing a lot of power in their bending or braking rods,
Right.
or lack of maintenance, and it's just wreaking havoc on the whole engine, really. But are there some common things people should look out for? Say if they were looking to buy a used one, and they're thinking, okay, what potentially could go wrong with the engine? What should I check out before I buy it?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, the 6.7 probably one of the better platforms we've had out of all the engines we build as far as just the reliability. Here we are, we're in it 10 years already. Well, 11 to 23, so 12 years almost. And I mean, we don't see the failure like we have in the past. So moving forward, really when you're looking at a truck like that engine standpoint, you just want to make sure maintenance is on key. The bottom ends, I mean, most of the stuff that's failing is probably ones that are used, like I said, to the maximum capacity. And then as far as that though, there's not a ton of stuff that can just be fixed like it can on the 6.0 6.4s. The 6.7s, we gotta do something special over here with the bearings because we don't really like the tangless bearings. So we do a pin we install on the cap side of the mains to keep that intact. But besides that, everything else, when we put it back together, unless the guy's trying to build power, it's pretty much an OE setup going back together.
And when it comes to like what your favorite truck is, or what you drive, are you a Powerstroke guy? Is that what you prefer?
Uh, yeah, I'm a Powerstroke guy. I've owned a few in my time here at J&K. I definitely like the platform and the truck the best out of all three. But we won't get into anything else about that.
I was trying to see if there was a Cummins or Duramax guy there.
No, I try to stay faithful to Powerstroke. Can't say I haven't been, tinker with the Duramax a time or two, but yeah, pretty faithful on those 6.0 6.4. So
Now, if you were looking for a used one, because we get this question a lot from people they don't want to spend the price on a new one. And they say, all right, well, but I want something that's reliable, I can tow with. Maybe I want to make a little bit more power. When you look at 7.3, 6.0, 6.4, some of the early 6.7 Powerstrokes, which one would you pick from the perspective of not having to do an engine rebuild? If you stay on top of your maintenance, stay on top of those things. Because I think what I found is when they want to do when they do an engine build, it's either because they had a massive failure or they're building a ton of power and they just know that the stock setup isn't going to hold it. Which one would you pick if you wanted kind of like the ultimate daily driver?
yeah, ultimate daily driver. If I had to really choose, it's definitely gonna be the 6 liter. That platform, I think you can fix some things without having to go internally. That'll give you plenty of reliability and daily drive and be able to push for. I mean, I see plenty of them on the road with 250 plus all day long that have done the maintenance, done the stuff that as quote unquote bulletproof as they say to keep the longevity. And I think as platform goes, that's probably their best all around engine in my personal opinion.
It's really interesting how the perception has changed from when those trucks were new and then just
Yeah.
immediately after is like, you know, either you shied away from them or you got it and you're like, oh man, I should have waited for the 6.4. I should have got a 7.3. But the perception, and well, it's not even just perception. It's like the reality of it has changed so much with what like you can do it as an engine builder internally with them. And you talked about the stroker kit and other things that are out there. The innovation's still going on, even though the last one was in 2007.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy how long I mean, it still is. I mean, maybe bigger now today than it was in the '03 to '07 range. I mean, I think more people, especially like I said, young kids, the price point's getting right for the trucks itself, and so you're just still getting more and more people in them every single day. And then the diesel industry is just still research, innovating, still trying to push the limit in all aspects of it, and it's a cool thing. It's still evolving, which is awesome.
If we were to look out a little bit, like say this year and the next year, what are some things that either you're excited for as an engine builder, as it pertains to the Powerstroke platform, or things you would like to see happen to maybe have an engine hold a bit more power, or maybe there's a new material or a new coating, or just some stuff you're excited about when it pertains to engines?
Yeah. That's a good question. I get wrapped up into the everyday builds. I don't dig too much into what guys do as far as innovation goes and research on, fuel and air. Man, it's crazy. But just seeing it growing in the whole is cool in the power stroke stuff, man. I'm more excited to see what they're gonna do with these 6.7s because it's a slow thing. They're still not really pushing the limit. I think a lot of the emissions things have a lot to do with that and how they have to navigate the systems. But I'm more excited about that and seeing where they put that platform and giving us the free will to build whatever we can to match it. So
Well, it's such a long run of it too. As you think of, the 6 liter, you had '03 to '07, had '08 to 10 with
right.
the 6.4s, and I get 11 to 23 with the 6.7. So there's, gosh, just think of the amount of trucks that are out there and they're going to stay out there. And, what sort of technology or things like that might pop up for them to push them a bit farther. I think it's definitely changed. I think the perception, like I talk to a lot of guys and I say, what new diesel truck would you buy? And it doesn't matter if they're a Cummins guy or Duramax or whatever it is. They're like, man, those Fords are really nice. I really like it. Or I use a Ford to tow my, UCC Cummins that I'm going to go
Yeah, for
compete
sure.
in. So they've definitely, I don't know, they've kind of, I don't know what the right word is. It's just, they're so, they have so much technology in them, especially the new ones with the 10 speeds and how responsive
Yeah.
the engines are and everything. So I'm looking forward to see where those can go in the future.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Patrick. It's exciting, man. I'm glad that, 10 years ago, I was able to walk into this industry and see what it's doing. And it's definitely been a cool experience.
Thought of another question to ask you. A lot of younger people will ask, say they're just finishing up high school, just out of high school, and they love diesel trucks. For whatever reason, they were drawn to them. And they say, I don't want to go sit in an office. I don't want to go work in this other industry. I love to work on these things. What sort of advice would you give somebody to be able to do what you do, to be able to work on engines and just be around diesel performance and building and the technology? How can they do it? What's the best way?
Best way, find you a shop. There's a ton out there. And if you got to walk in and sweep the floors, sweep the floors. Whatever it takes, a lot of, but our shop in general, it's a ever growing shop. We're constantly expanding. Sometimes it's going into that door and doing the bare minimum, well, the maximum for the minimum. Even like I said, if it's sweeping floors, whizzing a bolt here or there, whatever it might be, cleaning parts, whatever it is, if you want to be in that industry, you got to start somewhere. And a lot of times it's a knock on a door and a handshake, and you'll get an opportunity, man. Diesel is in need of good technicians, people willing to learn it.
Yeah, I think that I've heard the phrase used before, just showing up, like showing up and saying, "Hey, do you have an opportunity? Let me start here," because there is a tremendous need, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, at all levels with these, and they're not going away. They're diesel's used in so many different industries and so many different applications, and I think a lot of times younger people can think, "Oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. Like, how can I, one day be able to, assemble these engines or design a part, or maybe they do want to be in the office. Maybe they do want to do these things and talk
Right.
about it and everything. And just it's always really insightful to hear from people who are in it, tips they would give. And I'm sure you enjoy it, you love what you do. It probably doesn't feel like work when you just get to focus in on an engine, get it
Yeah.
built, do some stuff, and the reward is tremendous.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just me in particular, I love to teach these guys. that we have on our staff the next thing. And it's cool. I mean, I've been fortunate to taught a lot of guys and have a lot of guys come through this shop, and guys that have come through the shop and now move forward. It's a good thing, 100%.
There's a certain percentage of our listeners who are, are shop owners, and I think about the ones who've started within the last couple years, and maybe they're growing. And you'd mentioned teaching, and I think knowledge transfer is one of the toughest things that they have to face. Is how do you take like the expertise that you have, Zach, and be able to transfer some of it or parts of it to somebody else? What are some ways that you found are really effective to being able to teach somebody either an aspect of what you do or an aspect of what the company wants done so that they retain it, they try to perfect it, they become proficient in it?
Yeah, for sure. Patience. Patience is always key to being able to teach knowledge, and understanding that the words you're saying to them, you can actually do yourself. A lot of that is them being able to see you perform it in the same aspect, not just speak it, and then patience in what you're teaching. Because, not everybody has 10 years or 20 or 30 years of experience. They're trying to learn, so it takes multiple times. But all in all, I think you can definitely say if you can have patience and when you teach and be able to show them, that goes a long way in being able to share that knowledge.
That's one of the tough parts for me is like I don't learn best by reading or somebody telling me. I have to actually do it. Like I like to read and have a general understanding, but I have to actually get in there and do something to be able to retain it. So the different learning styles that people may have, somebody might be, you can just tell them once and they got it, and someone else they might need to do it a few times to get a handle on it. So probably reading people as well and what way they learn best probably helps with that knowledge transfer.
Yes, I agree.
With I was just thinking of, and I know I didn't prime you for the 7.3 stuff, but but I know there's going to be somebody who watches this who goes, well, he didn't ask about the 7.3s. Like what's going on with 7.3s? And I've heard that even though, gosh, what's the last one in '03? They're still popular. People are still doing stuff with them. There's still things coming out for the 7.3s. What's your opinion on, say, like the 99.5 to '03s from an engine builder perspective? Like, I think of them as they might not have made a ton of power, but they're almost bulletproof. They'll go forever. They're just tough engines.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. 7.3s are fun. I love them because they're heavy. No, but yeah, as far as bulletproof standpoint, they're probably one of the most reliable platforms that, well, probably arguably is that Ford's made or international has had part in. We don't see a ton of failure. More so, just wore out from the miles they've been put on them.
Do you ever hear from those customers where the engines are wore out, like how many miles they have on them? Like,
Yeah. I've actually personally rebuilt many motors, and this team's rebuilt. It's probably had 500,000, 550. I mean, I probably don't remember, but I guarantee we've seen some with over 600,000.
It's crazy how long they go. And I think that's part of the allure of it is, we're not building a race truck. We want something reliable, starts up, hauls something. And when I think of ultimate reliability, there's a couple trucks I think of, and the 7.3 is definitely one of them. And I mean, there are guys out there racing them, and there's a ton of performance products and things. So if you do want a bit more power with them, then there you go. Would you say there's a failure that you see on those higher mileage ones, on those 7.3s that are common?
Small failure really. The one thing we probably see the most out of the older engines is they were kind of prone, some of them, a casting flaw where they have pinholes in the cylinder walls. So when we actually rebuild our 7.3s nowadays, we actually sleeve every cylinder to eliminate that on all 7.3s that we build. And then injector cup failure. So we install new injector cups on those. And then we even take a little step further and put all brand new valves in when we go. But just as far as like a failure we see out of cores, it's usually, I mean, man, I can honestly say more times than not, it's totally just worn out. It's not really one thing or another. There's not really a lifter issue and those type of things. It pretty much sticks to just flat being used.
Yeah, it's a lot of miles on them. I did forget to ask you a question. I saw it here on my note sheet. and it was about the 6-liter in heads. Is there a lot to gain by upgrading the heads on a truck so you're going to drive every day? Or is it just the O-ringing part that they need, or what would you tell somebody? It's like, well, should I just go back with a set of stock heads and O-ring them, or should I do something with the valves and porting and polishing and getting them to flow a little bit better?
I mean, if we're just talking daily driver, just OE heads. I mean, we've been doing that for 10 years. Probably should put on, oh man, gosh, probably 4,000 heads. And we just do the OE. We do a valve job on them. And then again, if you're wanting to tow O-rings, just the next step. If you're getting into performance, there's plenty of options out there. But just for what we do here at J&K, which is just, the everyday guy that's using our truck for work, just stock OE head is fine with making sure you have a deck on it, and then flat surface and O-ring heads if you're going to push it just a little bit.
That flat surface probably is incredibly important with those trucks that get higher mileage and a ton of heat cycles and things like that, where you can probably get some warping and things, which is probably common on really any of the engines we've chatted about. But I think that's and there's so much to talk about with Powerstroke engines, and we have so many different kind of listeners where they got a 7.3 or they got a 6.7, 2017, or they've got a 08 that they're looking to do something on. So I know there's tons of information, tons of different directions to go, but I appreciate you chatting with us and giving us kind of an overview, regardless of what your Powerstroke that the person may have, some things to look out for that may be failure points, and then options that you guys have to fix them, which these trucks will run forever if you just treat them right. Pretty much any of them,
Yeah, I agree. Really results back to maintenance, man. Stay on top of it. The small things are what matter at the end of the day, and especially in anything, especially in Powerstroke industry as a whole. Obviously the 6-liter, making sure you do what you need to do with the emission 6064. That's always key. And then ultimately, if you maintain these things and treat them right, they most of the time will treat you right.
Well, awesome. It was great to chat with you, Zach. I appreciate getting to get some insights from you, learn more about what you do at J&K, and some really good information that our listeners can take out there, apply towards their builds or the truck they may be looking at to buy. So look forward to chatting with you in the future, seeing what cool stuff you guys are building and coming up with for Powerstrokes.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for having us.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20diesel for 20% off site-wide. Save some money on some really cool gear. They've got a bunch of new models for 2023. Their Duralock models are new. I've got my hands on some of them. I love them. They're great just throwing a pocket or, having a toolbox, something like that. They're priced right. They use D2 steel on the blade. The opening mechanism is really sweet as well. Keeps your fingers out of the way. It's super easy to open. It stays locked. So if you're in the market, head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20diesel. Save some money on some really cool gear. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, John, also J. Cole, all of our other patrons, all of you who subscribe on YouTube, podcast apps, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We appreciate all your support in year 7 of the Diesel podcast, and we love to hear from you guys. So if there's a suggestion for a show or topic, definitely let us know. Reach out to us on any of those platforms, and we'd love to be able to make it into a future Diesel podcast episode. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.